but then I also have the ability when needed to do all of my own stuff too. You really don't understand how much photography can cost until you try to find someone to do your photos, especially when you try to find someone to do your photos on a regular basis. It's been really good. It's also been really great that I can do things when I need or I want them.
Today, I had the great opportunity to chat with Lucy Petlak. Lucy is the owner of the women's lifestyle website, Lucy's Morsels. And the interesting thing about Lucy is that we've known each other for a while, and she outsources some of her recipe development and food photography to me. But Lucy covers a lot of different subjects with her brand and website. And so she likes to keep some of that content development in terms of photography and product photography in-house, and she likes to do it herself. So we had a great conversation about how her skills have grown, how she still faces some challenges and how she overcomes those challenges, and how doing some of that work in-house has helped her to build her brand, to help her with her schedule, to be more creative, and to help her save money for her brand and business. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Okay. Hi, Lucy. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really appreciate it. So I previously did a little bit of an intro about who you are and the work that you do. And so I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about why is it important for you to shoot some of your images in-house for your brand?
Absolutely. So my brand is a lifestyle brand, which I joke that covers all manner of sin. And it's very true. A lot of what I do is predictable along the lines of food, fashion, and travel. But there's also a lot of other components and a lot of other products or scenes that I want to capture. And one of the things that's really important is that with my lifestyle brand, it needs to be my life. And sadly, I don't have a photographer living in the house, I guess, besides myself. And so it's really important that I'm able to capture those moments, or at least attempt to capture those moments when they come up. And sometimes it's products that come in that I need to shoot photos of, and other times it's just I don't want to call it filler content, but all the content that comes in between sponsored content or promoted content or anything like that. But just the plain me, I guess, in the background.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how has it helped, like, creating those images yourself and taking on some of that work? Because I think a lot of times, and it helps me when people outsource, of course, because I do some of that work, but whenever you're a small business and brand, how has that helped you to grow by taking on some of that work yourself and building your skills?
So when I started blogging, oh gosh, math, a little over 8 years ago, my boyfriend, now husband, was taking my photos. And other than that, I was taking my photos. So in many ways, I started doing my own photography. And obviously through just practice, plain and simple, the practice is the best way to improve. Not that I'm great about that, but nevertheless, I know that it's true. So I was doing my own stuff for a really long time with no help besides occasionally my boyfriend jumping in, uh, besides doing like the fashion stuff. And then as time progressed, there were a lot of different needs that I had in terms of the kinds of things that I wanted photographed, how I wanted them photographed. And so when the opportunity came up to find someone to help me with my food photography and recipe creation, I took that opportunity quickly. And it was a bit of a gamble. Not so much that I didn't know that the product would be great, but outsourcing that, paying for someone else to do that, this sounds silly, but having to come up with the ideas that I wanted a month ahead of when I was going to talk about them, you wouldn't think that's complicated, but sometimes you're mentally not in that space. And then also I had a friend, there was just sort of an opportunity to have her start taking my fashion photos. And so at the same time, I kind of outsourced two of these things. And I've since moved, and so my friend was not able to take my photos. And luckily, I still have you to do my food photos. So I have sort of this combination of getting help with some things and then doing a lot of it myself. Even if my husband is helping me, I still have to create the scene, I still have to work on the lighting, and I still do the editing after. And so it's been really great to pass off some of that and to just have that content created for me. I don't need to worry about more days of getting the lighting right, getting the recipe right, taking care of my baby in the background while all this is going on. But then I also have the ability when needed to do all of my own stuff too. Um, I hope
Yeah.
that,
So how does
okay,
that,
it was a
yeah,
lot.
no, that's great. So how does that, like doing a lot of the stuff in-house and pulling some of that stuff back in, you've obviously been through the change where you did it yourself, you outsourced a bit, and then you're taking some of it back. How has that influenced, your time and working with other people with their schedules, and also financially? Because as you know, photographs and things like that, whether it's food or products or fashion, can be pretty expensive. So what have the benefits been for you kind of pulling some of that back in? And do you think it's beneficial to have that back in for the place you are right now in your business?
Yeah. So the cost, you really don't understand how much photography can cost until you try to find someone to do your photos, especially when you try to find someone to do your photos on a regular basis. Even finding somebody who's in your budget, it has to consistently be in your budget. And for somebody who's not a professional photographer, the numbers can be kind of mind-boggling when you really go to look. I mean, I'm full disclosure, anybody else who's tried to find someone else to do photography, it's crazy. So from a financial standpoint, actually not having someone to take my fashion photos has saved a big part of my budget every month. Unfortunately, now I'm doing it again. But I don't, there's something to be said by not having to outsource that. I think one of the things that's been really great for me too is that I am now a little bit more, I don't know, off the cuff with my photography. So some things are more planned out. On this day, I'm going to shoot this. But other things, it's like, oh, I want to do this. Okay, let me just do that right now. Or let me kind of recreate this just a little bit later when I know the lighting is coming in the right side of my house or whatever it is. So that's been really good. It's also been really great that I can do things when I need or I want them. One of the other things about working with a photographer or any sort of other content provider or anything like that is that you're trying to balance two people's schedules. So just because you have an idea at this point, when your photographer is able to get to them might be in 3 to 4 weeks. And sometimes you just don't always have that time to turn those things around. So being able to do it on my schedule is really helpful. Even if I know that my photography may not be as good as the person who I normally work with, I think that there's still something to be said about, doing it jointly, doing it together. And so as a whole, we kind of help create my brand.
Got it. Okay. So it sounds like as you're building your skills, it's causing you to be both more creative, and then also you have the ability to be flexible for when you do it, or if you have an emergency need and you have the skills that you can shoot that product photo or whatever that might be.
Yes, I also have to learn to be more kind to myself, that maybe when I shoot photos, it doesn't look exactly how I thought I wanted it. Maybe it looks, just a little bit less something, and that's okay. So that's really something that I've had to embrace. Partly is, what my style is, but also what am I capable of?
Right.
And so being patient of, I like this sort of look, and so in order for me to attain that, it's not going to look exactly as I pictured. It's still going to look good.
Mm-hmm.
So patience with yourself is a really big part of this process.
Right. Well, speaking of patience and kindness to yourself, what are the challenges that you're facing with, I've seen your photos change for the better as you've improved your skills and you've kind of created your brand and things align, right? So, but it sounds like you still have some challenges in creating images like you see them in your head. So, what are the main ones for you?
Details. I know that sounds so funny, but I feel as though when you're doing photography and you're learning about styling, you either err on the side of too many things in your pictures, or you err on the side of not enough. And finding that happy balance of adding in just the right kind of touches is partly where I struggle. And so I have an image in my head, and then when I'm looking at it, when I've set it up, not through my camera, I think it looks good. I'm like, this is exactly right. And then I take the picture and I'm like, it's so flat is the word. It's like, okay, I see that you have this item on a napkin on your shelf. Great. And so I've had to be um, again, patient with myself and be like, okay, what do I need to add? What do I have that I can add? And sometimes it's, I have this bunch of lavender that is years old at this point, and for some reason, it is one of my absolute go-tos for just sticking in the corner of a photo. And so it's funny because in looking at the photos that you do, in general, and then also for me, I'm now much more mindful of like, she put dill in the corner and it looks great. Like, who would have thought 6 sprigs of dill would be so life-changing? But it's the little things like that. So I obviously err on not enough going into the photo. And so I really have to take the picture and then be patient with myself and say, okay, what can I put in here that will really complete this image to make it look and feel like it does in real life, but on the image itself, which sounds simple when I tell you,
Mm-hmm.
but I get really frustrated with it on the regular.
Right, right.
So that's one thing I have now. In the past, I've had lighting situations. So getting the lighting I want in the room I want to be in at the right time has been challenging. Luckily, our new home has pretty bright light throughout the day, so that's been really great. And then in our old apartment, for whatever reason, everything felt very yellow to me or very warm, and that was not a look that I wanted in any way, shape, or form. So and we moved. That's how I fixed that problem. It sounds terrible. But anyway, sometimes it's just like the lighting really kills whatever buzz you have of like, oh, this is going to be great, and then it's not. And sometimes it's just, you know, the surroundings you're in, and so a simple change can really help it.
Yeah, I love that you brought up shooting in that home space or home studio, because really you have to work to find that spot. Even in my home studio, I know where that spot is. I know the times of day I want to shoot, and you have people. When the pictures turn out, and it's like, how did you do that? Well, I know my space, and that's one thing that
10:15
right
in the
exactly
kitchen on the left side of the table. Yeah.
right.
Oh, absolutely. And let me tell you, the stress if you're behind to get to that time is also very real. You're like, this recipe's not going to be done in time, and so then you kind of just, I don't know, throw it all together to see if it'll work. And sometimes it doesn't. I think that's the other thing, is I expect that every single time will work out, and it doesn't. Sometimes it's phenomenal, sometimes it's good and it's fine, and other times, no, just just no. Yeah.
And you'll find that, as you keep working. And I think one thing that you brought up that was interesting was just the thing about the dill. And I too have a pack of lavender that I use. But picking up on that, because that's one thing that I typically tell people if they are stuck on set, is to fill in those corners. Because I think we all tend to be a bit minimal with things whenever we have a hero, whether it's a product or a food. And I term it mess it up a bit, which I know not everyone is into a messy photo, but filling in just that corner, you don't even have to know what it is, right? You don't always know that it's dill or it's an ingredient, but just filling in that corner can completely change the image.
Yes.
And there'll be times whenever you kind of just have to step back and maybe it didn't work. I think it's all part of the learning process.
Yeah. I found in my experience when I used to do all my food photography and other things, that there are just different things that work well for each kind of food, or sorry, each sort of genre of photography. So with food, there might be 2 or 3 things that I use. With anything that's lifestyle, I do lavender, eucalyptus, and I have a blanket that I'll kind of do in the background. And any combination or even just one of those 3 things is great. And then if it's, fashion, it's something else. And so I just have like these core group of things. It's not a million things. It's just a handful of each for like each genre that I do.
Oh, that's perfect. That's a great tip, because I always get that question, when I don't have a lot of props. How do I make the photo look a bit different, right? And the fact that you have kind of categorized your photography, since you're shooting so many different things, to those go-to things, that's a really great tip for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we have worked together a bit. You talked about lighting. We've talked a bit about trying to get your lighting right and getting that directional light for your photos. What, have there been some other tips you've picked up besides the dill in the corner and things like that from our working together?
The lighting has been helpful. I will still, and I've told you this many times before, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'm like, oh, why doesn't this work? And then other times before I even start, I'm like, okay, Lori would tell me to block off this side of the lighting, so those little things have been really helpful. Weirdly, and I'm not sure that this is something that you spent a lot of time on in your courses, but one of the things I've gotten from you is to practice and to embrace it. And so I'm not apt to take my big fancy camera, or my little fancy camera as it turns out on a walk. But every time I look up and I see something pretty in the trees, or I see an animal, I take out my phone and I take a picture, whether or not I'm going to post it or not. And so that's something that's really kind of got me at least embracing the idea of taking photos of things and becoming more comfortable with it. Um, and so I'm not sure that that was sort of an overt lesson that you taught me, but it's something that has helped me become more comfortable with just taking out my camera and taking pictures. And sometimes they're great and sometimes they're not, but a lot of times it doesn't matter. They're just more for me and getting me comfortable again. Because sometimes I've found that if I'm taking photos every day, it feels like nothing. And then if I take a week off, I'm like afraid to touch my camera. I don't know why, but that's just what it is. So this is kind of something that, regardless of whether I'm taking photos for work, I'm doing it consistently. And so it feels much more natural and much easier for me to do that.
Well, first of all, I love that I'm now in people's heads when they
I mean, in a good
think
way.
about what
Yeah.
Lori would tell me. But I love that you mentioned that, because what you're essentially doing is you're developing your eye. And that's what it takes to get yourself out of the specific subject that you shoot. And, you know, even if it's on a walk or whatever, your eye is noticing things. So when you bring that skill back to your photos, you're going to better create that scene, because you're going to be able to envision it, catch the right angle with your eye. I love that you mentioned that, for sure.
Yeah. I think it also works, going back a few minutes maybe ago, to your comment that people are like, oh, I only have the same props and the same things that I'm taking photos of. Sometimes the same props can look completely different. Just because of how you want to like reimagine the look of them, or the lighting of them, or maybe the color contrast of them.
Right.
And that will come from taking photos of whatever, whenever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Oh, I really appreciate this. You offered loads of tips, and you did. Yeah. Even things, I love your categorizing your different, types of images, and then heading out and taking pictures, which I do the same thing. And like you said, I don't always post them, but it's just developing that eye. So I really appreciate you talking with us today. I think what you've shared is going to help a lot of people. So just thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much to Lucy for having this video call with me. I think she shared a lot of great tips that can be helpful. Definitely let me know what you found most helpful through this video. On the next slide, I will put information on how you can find her and follow her, as well as updates on upcoming things with Lori Brice at loribrice.com and Creating You. And hopefully we can do one of these again. Let me know if you like it.